The E-Portfolio system is simply a tool to allow registrars in public health the ability to triangulate activities with evidence and with learning outcomes. And it's a way for registrars to demonstrate their progress through training. For registrars to sign off a learning outcome, they have to go through 2 steps. In the first step, they must get an activity summary signed off, to which that they have triangulated the learning outcome and some evidence to support it. Once the activity supervisor, who may or may not be the educational supervisor, has signed off the activity, in step 2, the learning outcomes are freed up for the registrar to submit individually for learning outcome achievement. So now let's have a look how this might look on the E-Portfolio system. On the left hand side of the screen I have signed in with an E-Portfolio test registrar account, and on the right hand side with a test educational supervisor account. It's important for registrars to check under my profile that they have assigned themselves the correct educational supervisor. They must also make sure that they have assigned themselves the correct training program director, and to make sure that the regions have also been selected correctly. Let's have a look at how we add an activity as a registrar. Simply clicking on the activity button in the left-hand navigation panel will bring up the list of current activities. To add a new activity, you simply click the relevant button. You must then select the region and find the activity supervisor. Let's put in an activity name. Here in the results panel, the registrar will write something regarding the outcome of the activity. Training location may be your local authority placement, which you could detail in full, and the date the activity was completed. Well, it should be today's date, bearing in mind that's when I'm completing this demonstration video, and a personal reflection is to be included in this box. Different activity supervisors may have different expectations with the degree to which a registrar must reflect on an activity. For registrars, it may be worth having a conversation prior to submitting an activity to ensure that these expectations are met. Once the registrar is happy, they can save and now link this to evidence and learning outcomes. So now you can see that we've clicked on the Add Evidence or Learning Outcomes. You can see this is still referring to our activity, Demo Activity 2. The first part of the screen shows evidence that's added, the type, the date added. You can see no evidence has been assigned to this activity yet. And at the bottom you can see the list of learning outcomes, and nothing has been assigned at this stage. Expand all, you can see each of the key areas and each of the learning outcomes associated with them. So to link to existing evidence. By existing evidence, this is referring to evidence that the registrar has already uploaded. To upload evidence, the registrar would choose the evidence button on the left-hand panel. But I've already uploaded a little bit of evidence, so I will just demonstrate that. All the possible evidence is listed on the left-hand side, and the evidence related or triangulated to this activity is on the right. And there's 2 ways of doing this. You can either double-click and it will move across, or you can highlight and use these buttons in the middle. Once you're happy that you've assigned a piece of evidence, you can add it to your list of evidence. And you can see it's now appeared as evidence item number 2, associated with Demo Activity 2. But I would like to triangulate a learning outcome to this, so I'd simply click on this button here. You have to write a brief reflection on how this meets that particular learning outcome. It will not let you save this unless you have written something in this box. Let's just add another learning outcome. Once you are happy that you have triangulated enough learning outcomes, linked all your relevant pieces of evidence, and these have been triangulated to the activity, then we must now save these. If we don't save these, they will not be associated with the activity. You can now see the demo activity 2 is on our list. It's still open, but I'm relatively happy that I think this is ready for submitting. The registrar will now simply click on demo activity 2 and choose the submit item button. So let's submit this now. So this is where we go over to the educational supervisor account. Here in the navigational panel, the educational supervisor can look at activities that need to be signed off or learning outcomes that need to be signed off. So in this case, we've sent an activity across. So let's view outstanding activities and see if it appears. To open this up, you must click on the left-hand activity name. So here you can see the activity, demo activity 2 as an educational supervisor would see it, the associated details and reflection, the evidence that's been associated with it, and the learning outcomes which the registrar has chosen to triangulate with the evidence and the activity. The supervisor simply has to choose the date of the review, and they must write a reflection on the activity and then could approve. Before I do that, let me just show you, if you wanted to look at a bit of evidence in detail, you can click on the evidence button and click on the download button, which will allow you to access the piece of evidence. Evidence number 2. Once you're happy that you've seen sufficient evidence, you can then continue to approve or reject the activity. I think in this case, we'll go ahead and approve. Don't forget, we're not signing off learning outcomes with this action, we're simply signing off the activity. At this stage, the registrar may or may not feel that they've got sufficient evidence towards a learning outcome. Learning outcome may be obtained from several different activities, each containing several pieces of evidence. However, for the purpose of this demonstration, we'll simply submit those 2 learning outcomes that we just triangulated with the last activity. You can view the outstanding learning outcomes as a registrar to see what's left to be obtained. Registrars cannot submit learning outcomes for sign-off unless they have been associated with an activity. Here under 4.5, you can see the activity that's been associated and that it's got 1 piece of evidence. You can also click on there and expand this button to show that the evidence is evidence item number 2 and the date it was added. For submitting, it will also ensure that it's going to the right educational supervisor. So I'll submit that one. I also wanted to submit the other one, and let's submit it again. And that's gone across too. So those are now in cyberspace, heading over to the educational supervisor account. You can see the outstanding learning outcomes here, and they are color coded. Anyway, let's head quickly over to the educational supervisor account and click on outstanding learning outcomes for sign off. And you can see it's come across from the registrar called test account 8.9 and 4.5. So let's have a look at the first. 8.9, so the educational supervisor can see the nature of the learning outcome, the date of submission, and then the assessment method may be a written report, such as the piece of evidence we've already assigned, maybe from direct observation, from discussing the case, from a multi-source feedback, or from the Part A or Part B exams. Here you'll be able to see all the activities and the evidence that has been used to demonstrate, and here the educational supervisor gets to decide whether no achievement has been established, whether minimal, partial or full achievement, and by referring to the 2015 curriculum, this will give the educational supervisor and the registrar some sense of which level of achievement they have obtained. We'll put in the review date of today and we will click the approve button. So this was the other one which we haven't yet signed off. So let's see, just do this one whilst we're here. And this time let's say, okay, we had a case discussion and a written report. We don't think it's been achieved, so we're going to reject this time. And we'll reject that. And let's see what happens the other side now for those two learning outcomes. So let's go to 4.5 and let's see, oops, it's in red. It's on no achievement, so this isn't good. Let's flick down to 8.9. You can see now this has turned yellow. You can see partial achievement. And so when the registrar is ready to resubmit, they will assign more evidence to that. Let's just have a look at 4.5. What's clear is actually when you look at this, that only the rejection reason appears, the comments don't appear for rejection. Again, you can resubmit when you've got new evidence, possibly assigned to new activities towards getting it signed off. So just to recap, so far I have shown you how a registrar would add an activity, triangulate that to evidence and learning outcomes, how they would then submit the activity to an activity supervisor, how the activity supervisor would approve the activity, and then how the learning outcomes that have been triangulated with that activity can then be submitted individually back to the educational supervisor for learning outcome sign-off, which ultimately is what is needed to show progression for the registrar through training.